Good evening, and thanks for joining the stream here tonight. Um, Obviously, there was a lot of developments over the weekend regarding the war in Iran. This has kind of been boiling over and building up for some time now, and it seems like the hammer, the shoe, has officially dropped here. And so, looking forward to getting into all of it. I kind of want to break the show tonight into kind of three parts: how we got here, what exactly kind of happened, and what the implications are broadly kind of going forward here. And so, first of all, just to be completely honest with you guys, because I want to try and be as transparent of a creator with you guys as possible. My statements and my predictions on Friday were not they did not age very well. I said on Friday that I didn't really believe a full-on war would ensue, kind of similar to what happened in last June when we kind of bombed the nuclear sites and were in and out essentially in a day. And we kind of left Iran, at least our nuclear program, kind of devastated. And I thought it was kind of going to be like that. Now, Trump is saying that this could be an operation that lasts and stretches on for weeks on end, possibly months, worst case scenario. So this is not the quick cut Venezuela type operation that I think a lot of the more radical, far right on the wing were kind of hoping for if we did anything at all. But to kind of understand the weight and, the meaning behind what exactly happened, I think is really important to kind of understand how we got here in the first place. Going back decades, the United States and Israel have done a lot of work to go ahead and either partner Israel up with their Arab neighbors or weaken them enough as to make them a non-threat and therefore reliant over their government, make them more compliant with our interests. In a vacuum, all else being equal, when you're the world empire and you are trying to bend the world to your will, that's not really a negative thing. I don't necessarily disagree with the interventions in the Middle East in principle. I just want those operations to happen in our backyard, which is why I very thoroughly and heavily support the modern reduction of just dominating the Western Hemisphere, making sure no one's in our backyard influencing our resources and our interests. Nonetheless, we went through Libya, we went through Tunisia, we went through Syria, we went through Lebanon, we went through Egypt, we went through Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Oman, Qatar, UAE, and of course, Iraq. And the last shoe to drop was Iran. Now, a lot of people are kind of confused on, well, if this happened today over the weekend, then what exactly did we really do last June? Why did we have to do this again here? The reason why that is because last June, we were in discussions with Iran because their nuclear build-up was kind of getting a little bit up there, almost to the point where they could enrich enough uranium to create a nuclear bomb. And I will say this when it comes to the whole operation, you can't really say that Trump betrayed his base. He's been saying Iran can't get a bomb for very long, right? He's been saying this since 2015, 2011, 2013, even. So he has been saying they can't get a bomb. So him doing this in principle by that rhetoric is not really, it's not really a betrayal. It's more or less just him saying, hey, I'm going to do this. And if I do it, don't say I didn't tell you I was going to do it. So in that sense, he was kind of being transparent and honestly upholding a campaign promise that he said that Iran will not get a bomb. So we bombed the sites in Iran back in June. Since then, their talks have been about not whether or not they're close to the bomb because they were set back years. The Trump administration was trying to talk with Iran to have them agree to not try again. This was what I kind of talked about last week regarding enrichment versus the actual bomb making itself. It's a little bit stricter to say that Iran can't ever make or can ever enrich uranium. because uranium does have some civilian purposes. Obviously, you're not going to enrich up to 60 or 80% just to do commercial stuff. But it was either, no enrichment or just no bomb. The no bomb part was a lot easier for the Iranians to go ahead and agree to, but it appears that the administration was steadfast on no enrichment at all. So in that case, it comes down to, well, why was this an issue in the first place? If we're going to take this holistically here, we have to understand that Iran in itself, more broadly, was what would you say, in a very lose-lose situation. They're between a rock and a hard place. Because when you look at Iraq and Libya, for example, both countries were nuclearized or nuclearizing. France had actually given Iraq a nuclear reactor that Israel had actually then bombed shortly thereafter. And of course, Libya was nuclearized. In the pursuit of peace, Libya denuclearized. This is the country that Muammar Gaddafi ruled over. Well, once he denuclearized, the country was overthrown and he was killed. He was slaughtered by his death. And so therefore, they're a non-factor. Iraq, well, we all know what happened in Iraq. We bombed the nuclear reactor, or Israel did rather. We went in there on bullshit, kind of Cassius Bellish, bullshit terms, reasons, causes for bombs that didn't exist, just to kind of put them out of their misery and leave them worse off than they were. Same thing with Afghanistan, of course. So the last country in the Middle East that had a remote chance of getting this nuclear weapon, and who were also largely funding the opposition to Israel, was Iran. And if you were taking a look back on history, down memory lane, it's very obvious as to why exactly they wanted to do this. Why do they want a bomb? I think it's very simple. If you're going to look at history and trying to find out, why countries, why administrations do what they do, why regimes do what they do, you have to remember that Iran saw what happened to Libya. Iran saw what happened to Iraq. And the thing they have in common was they were denuclearized and overthrown shortly thereafter. Turns out that having a nuclear weapon gives you lots of leverage in diplomatic negotiations. Who thought? So seeing what happened to Libya, Iraq, Yemen, Syria, Iran knew that the nuke was the only thing keeping them from given what happened to Iraq and Libya and Syria and all the other Middle Eastern countries that have been toppled since. They knew that was the answer, which is why on Friday, like I said, after June, they didn't have any build-up capacity. They were set back years into the future, or years in the past, rather. And so they didn't have a bomb now. And the Pentagon actually confirmed that there was no imminent threat from Iran at the time of the attack. Now, I'll get into why that really doesn't matter. With the talks not really coming to anything, because the United States had a very strict, you cannot enrich stance, right? Quite radical. If they had said no bomb, this would be a different story. But it wasn't their position. Their position was no enrichment. So, of course, Iran was like, we're not going to do that. So as the talks really kind of dissolved in productivity, it kind of became a Cold War standoff where all the sides kind of knew this wasn't going to go anywhere. And they were just trying to see who was going to blink first. Now, the reason why Israel struck when they did is because Iranian officials, I don't know why they would do this in this kind of situation, but many top Iranian officials met in person at a singular location that Israel was aware of. So, doing what any country would do in this situation, they struck while the iron was hot and they hit. And subsequently, because it was a preemptive strike, we had joined in with them and everything kind of went thereafter. So, what do we know? What we know is that the supreme leader of Iran, Khomeini, is dead. The Ayatollah is dead. Now, there's a lot of talks that the son, the prince, the Shah of Iran will take over as leader. But the messaging and the rhetoric coming from the Trump administration is about as awful as you can get. In Venezuela, when we had done a Venezuelan operation, there was a plan. We went in, we disarmed all their defense capabilities, we went in at the dead of night, we kidnapped Maduro, and we knew who was coming thereafter. We knew that it was going to be a more friendly, warm, diplomatic partner than Maduro was. This Trump administration, Trump literally said in his update video just the other day that they are striking the government, weakening the government for the people to therefore strike and take the opportunity by the horns and seize freedom. Does that sound familiar? Going in there, guns blazing, under the impression he's like, hey guys, come on, let's do it now. The problem with these blow it up and see what happens operations is that you do not know who's going to fill that void. We hope that it's a more friendly, more liberal, progressive regime, people, party, whatever, actor. We hope that that's what happens, but there's no guarantee. When we went into Iraq, a more friendly regime did not take over. When we toppled Afghanistan, who took over in Afghanistan? Taliban, ISIS. The terrorists took over. See, when it appears the U.S., establishment or whoever is kind of devising these plans, the good people, the everyday citizens in these countries that we topple the governments for are not the ones that end up taking power. It's the radicals that do, because it's the radicals that do what needs to be done to seize power in the first place. So in regards to that, the idea that all we have to do is give them the opportunity to seize power is short-sighted and naive. U.S. soldiers have already died, which none did in Venezuela. And now it looks like we are involved in a long-term Middle Eastern war. And the president is Donald Trump. So, I just read a report. Take it with a grain of salt because I wasn't able to go ahead and, certify or verify the, credibility of it. But apparently Trump was kind of weighing either a limited strike or an all-out assault. And it looks like J.D. Vance was the one who pushed Trump to pull the ultimate trigger and launched a full-scale operation. If that report is true, and Vance was the deciding factor in all of this, his chances of being the nominee in 2028 are finito. They are done. It is over. And to be honest, same thing with Marco Rubio. So why is this all a really big deal? Well, Iran, like I said, it was the kind of not last line of defense, but it was the last big dog in the Middle East that was kind of keeping any kind of sort of balance of power there. Now that Iran is done with, and they really won't be able to be funding any like Hezbollah or any other terrorist proxy, this frees up Israel to kind of seize the moment. Because really in the Middle East there are two large powers. There's Israel and Saudi Arabia. But Saudi Arabia isn't going to do anything. They're just going to roll over for Israel. So we are essentially going to give the keys of the car to Israel. Because the idea is that we want to go ahead and we have Taiwan to worry about. You know, remember that NAFTA and Ronald Reagan and selling our future for selling our manufacturing hub and infrastructure for free trade. Remember that? And how it all went to China and you basically rely on Taiwan for chips. Well, that's where all of the attention is going to be for the whole 21st century. It's going to be in Asia. Because you have China, and you have Japan, and you have Taiwan. But we are kind of stretched thin. We have Ukraine and Russia to worry about. We have Taiwan to worry about. Of course, we have the Western Hemisphere to worry about. What we don't need to do is worry about the Middle East. So, what if there was a country, an ally, who we could kind of spend trillions of dollars, countless American lives, to clear the way, pave the way of any resistance, and basically give them ultimate power in the region so that we can put our attentions elsewhere. That country is now Israel. Israel has no opposition once Iran truly falls in the Middle East. They will have pretty much all the power necessary to inflict their will. That means all the oil, the Strait of Hormuz, which is a major global trade route. Once this is all complete, we will give the keys to them so we can pursue other endeavors to make America great again. The problem is that Israel and the United States have had a parasitic relationship for decades. Israel has taken advantage of us. They've taken advantage of our military. They've taken advantage of our economy. And to think that once we pave the way, we flatten the obstacles, get rid of the roadblocks, they will just continue being the Israel that we kind of see now is naive. In fact, it will not happen. Once Israel no longer needs to rely on our help to gain regional hegemony, they will drop us like a bad habit. They will control, like I said, they will control the oil in the region. They will control major trade routes. They will have more money than they know what to do with. They will have land to take advantage. They will have significant leverage over, name the country, really. Oil, trade routes. They will be able to build their militaries, nuclearized. What the United States just did over decades, was build a rival superpower that we cannot control. That is why this operation in Iran, it is incredibly short-sighted. But they shout death to America, death to Israel. If you had what we did to the Middle East happen to you, would you be very fond of us? If we were always tinkering in your business, in your operations, halfway across the world, would you be very fond of us? I don't think so. I don't think you would be. So why would we expect Iran to just want to play ball with us? To that matter, why would we expect any Middle Eastern country to play ball? Be it Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, I mean, you name it, right? Who would expect them to do that? Because I wouldn't. Hell no. Absolutely not. One of the reasons why America is great is because we are a global superpower. We have an economy that the country and the world just cannot resist. We'll slap them with tariffs and they still keep buying. We have a military that will discombobulate you and will snatch your leader up overnight. In reality, there's really nothing we can't do. But we just signed the warrant to not have Russia be the largest rival. It's not going to be China, because China's, of course, facing that large population bubble that, once that falls, it's going to be over. Russia, as long as we don't royally screw up the Ukraine-Russia war, we got to keep them separated from China, lest they leech onto each other and we really have problems. It is going to be a country that has no incentive to be our friend, having power and control over trade routes and half of the world's oil. And it will have been created by our tax dollars and our American lives. That is why the Iran war is bad. And it's really frustrating to see a lot of the propaganda that's coming from the more neocon establishment types. It's very robotic. It's very Fox News-y. It's almost like the bulletin went out in terms of what exactly to say to those who are skeptical about another Middle Eastern war. Oh, but he chant death to America. Oh, but you want those people to have a bomb? Stop and think for just 5 seconds. Take a deep breath, okay? We have given them every single reason not to trust us, to not cooperate with us. We've given them every single reason. And now we're telling them that they cannot leverage and defend themselves anymore. Iran has always been a country that, when we bombed their nuclear sites last year, as always, when we killed the military leader in Trump's first term, Iran gave advance notice and then bombed like an empty site for a show of power over their own people. This is what this country does, right? So in that way, it's kind of a paper tiger. On one hand, Iran is an imminent threat. If they get a nuclear bomb, who knows what they're going to do? Meanwhile, we killed their leader in what? A day? In an afternoon? Pat Buchanan totally vindicated. So the only way that the neocons can be right here is if we spend multiple weeks, possibly months, muddling around in the Middle East. Because only then will they have proven that Iran was a true threat that they said that they were. But if they do, and we do spend that much time, Trump's approval rating will be suicidal. Trump needed this to be a quick operation. He needed this to be swift. And the fact that American lives have already died, have already been lost, hurts him even more. Quite frankly, this might be, well, this is surely the end of J.D. Vance and any possibility of a 28 path to power. I was, talking with my buddies, and I said, Vance, I hope, hates Trump right now. I hope that he's saying to Trump, I really didn't support this, but because you are doing this and I have to at least semi-support you, you're putting me in a really tough situation here. But apparently, this was Vance's idea. Vance pushed Trump to do the major assault. And Marco Rubio just along for the ride. I said it before, and I'll say it again. Trump is ensuring, he's guaranteeing that anybody who comes out of this second Trump administration is radioactive. If you are from this Trump administration, you're trying to run for president in 2028, you're dead in the water. This has got to be a move that satisfies the boomers and Gen X. Because Gen Z, the youth, millennials, hate this move. And I hate to be like this. I really do. But politically, yes, the boomers and Gen X have a large swath of the voting bloc. Of course they do. And it's large part because falling birth rates and the looming population collapse. There's like 80 million millennials in the country and only 40 million Gen Alpha. Nonetheless, this vacuum that will come in 10, 15, 20 years once the boomers are out of politics, out of the voting population, and then Gen X are kind of taking out that spot, but they're smaller than the boomers, of course. The GOP will have already lost Gen Z and millennials entirely. And the influence that Israel has on U.S. foreign affairs will never be more obvious and undeniable. Operation Epstein Fury. Absolutely incredible. All right. Let me go ahead and take a look at some of these comments real quick here, guys. See what you guys are talking about. Yeah, Marco Rubio. Oh my goodness. Little Marco basically giving the game away. He just gave the game away. Basically saying that Israel called their own number. And they shot first. And because they did that, we had to join them in. So we quite literally, not only did we help Israel put Iran in an impossible situation, lose-lose proposition, but we also let them drag us right into the conflict. And now we are in it. And now Trump, maybe he's being classic Trump, but there's rumors, there's whispers, murmurs about possible boots on the ground. Imagine that. Donald Trump, a Donald Trump administration, putting boots on the ground in a war against Iran on behalf of Israel. So, one of the kind of interesting developments that has kind of happened in the right-wing conservative world has been the reaction by one Matt Walsh. Matt Walsh is quite closely teetering the line with his employer. He's been very outspoken about his opposition to the Operation Epic Fury, and developments that are coming thereafter. Basically calling out all the Zionists, all of the neocon establishment types correctly. And I think he's right. This administration is all over the place in terms of rhetoric and statements and propaganda. I think it's only a matter of, I think you see it over the summer. Over the summer, Trump is going to have a freak out. He's going to have a little bit of a mental breakdown about this when he realized that this operation is deeply unpopular. And being that, like I said, they're GOP Republicans, Trump was already in a bad spot when it came to the midterms because Republicans simply do not show up to vote in non-presidential elections. Add in a war in the Middle East, one that will drag on for weeks, possibly months. The whole thing is shot beyond repair. 1 second here, guys. 1 second. Sincerest apologies about that. It looks like my dog is absolutely going insane regarding everything right now. Just bear with you for the moment here. It looks like everything should be good now. But when it comes to Matt Walsh, though, in the Daily Wire, it really does seem that like it's Matt Walsh, Michael Knowles, and that's pretty much it, really, in terms of decent conservative analysis and commentary on current events. They ousted Brett Cooper, and so that's done. And I think it's only really a matter of time before Matt Walsh kind of sees himself out. Not in the same way that Candace Owens did, because Candace Owens kind of she didn't get pushed out. I think she like dived out of that company, and so I think Matt Walsh leaves for Michael Knowles though. But everything is just so deeply frustrated with this administration, and Nick Fuentes has a clip circulating where he's basically telling his supporters to go ahead and vote for Democrats. Now, I've always held that if Trump does not come back to the campaign Trump that he was, with his core campaign promises, that you risk having a large segment of your base not show up in the midterms. Because in my eyes, I agree with 2024 Trump, which is the Democrats, the left, will target the right unrestrained if they want in 24. So that's why you had to just put aside all the differences, form that big tent, and win at any means necessary. I'm not blackpilling just yet. I'm not blackpilling just yet. But it is looking more and more like this golden age that we were promised is going to be over in November. We had 2 years. And quite frankly, when the Dems take over in November, well, technically January because of when they're sworn in, when those Dems do take over and everyone gets impeached, they will deserve it. They will deserve getting impeached. Because if you can't do your job to the point where you protect yourself and you cover your own ass, then you deserve to get scalped. Joe Biden did it right before he got not thrown out of office, but he left office when Trump was getting inaugurated. He pardoned just about anyone and everyone, right? Making sure that at least those people could not face criminal conviction. Yeah, in the first administration, all the impeachments, they were just completely bullshit. They were. But at this point, you told us that in 24, we needed to win so that we could push back and play the offensive again. This is what happens when you do not follow through, which for Trump is something he's always struggled with. His rhetoric is really, really good. And I said this for the State of the Union address. Trump has a unique ability to always pull you back, even the most disaffected from his base. Even Nick Fuentes liked in some portions, a lot of the portions. Even Nick Fuentes liked that State of the Union address. Trump has a unique ability to pull you back in. He'll pull you right back in. But like a boyfriend who just cannot stop cheating on you. He just can't stop breaking your trust. You go right back and the same thing happens. Trump knows how to talk a big game. He knows how to talk a real big game. But he does not follow through. He gave up on mass deportations. That's it. All the fear mongering about the culture, about voting, it's over. Now I have no choice but to believe it was all for naught. Oh, but it's too difficult. You're not really taking into effect how difficult the mass deportations would have been and are. You can't just snap your fingers like Thanos and have them all go away. I'm not saying you can. I'm not saying it was easy. In fact, I said the opposite. I said at the very beginning of this administration, I said this. I said that what needs to be done will be messy. And the left will kick and scream and kick up mud. They will try and make the agenda, the enforcement of the agenda, as messy and as dirty as they possibly can. And the media will eat it up. So it is our duty, it is our job to make sure that we have strong stomachs to stay the course and to see it through. And we just have not seen that. We got too politically squeamish. 1 second here. My dog is gonna be the bane of my existence, but I love him though. All the libertarian. I mean, I of course talked about the mass deportations and ICE when everything was happening. We have Dave Smith kind of reneging on everything. Minneapolis was ground zero. It was the first step to see, okay, this is the first real major pushback that we're seeing. I mean, you had the LA riots as well, but none of it was like Minneapolis, especially with the two interactions where these Hollywood wannabe libs think that they are in Saving Private Ryan, trying to either run over an ICE agent or resist the being detained by another armed at the time. Of course, that was ground zero. And Trump folded. Just like that. And now the at least 10 million illegal immigrants that are here are going to stay. We already have people in the GOP pushing a soft amnesty. Rand Paul went on Joe Rogan and he said that the current people who are illegal in the country right now should not be deported. They won't be given citizenship, but they do not have to leave. But their children can become citizens. We have done amnesty before. Even St. Ronald Reagan, the guy who neocons salivate over. They cannot get enough of St. Ronald. He did amnesty to California and has been dead ever since. It's been dead ever since. So, yeah, we are in 2026. Trump was pushed to do and entered into a long-term operation in Iran over the nuclear capabilities. And he was pushed into it by none other than the golden boy himself, J.D. Vance. And of course, Marco Rubio just rolled with whatever Trump told him to do. So if you had placed money on J.D. Vance to be the 2028 MAGA Republican candidate nominee, I do sincerely feel bad for you. And I do not think that that'll age very well. Regarding the midterms, I don't think I would never vote Democrat. But the most undefeated candidate in political history is the couch. And I need to get activated to vote. And if I don't see a GOP who's serious about enforcing its agenda, I don't see a party to vote for. I'm not voting, or Republicans not voting in 2026 is not equivalent to them voting in a Democrat for president. The Dems take power in the midterms. All that will do is halt legislative processes and spur on hearings, committees, and impeachments. Which, like I said, at this point, they all deserve, especially Pam Bondi. My God. So let's take a little second here and look through the comments. Trump believes we'll be done in just a few weeks. That's the same thing Bush believed in Iraq. Yeah, like I said, when I'm not sure if I said this on Friday really, but I mean, if the whole Iran thing was like a Venezuelan type operation where you're in and out, and we kind of already have an idea of the person in the existing administration that we want to kind of deal with, then in principle, I could see potentially support an operation. But we are literally just flattening Iran, the government, and it's telling the people they have to go ahead and seize power. Name me one time it's ever happened. It's always the radicals who take power. You can't do it like this. We've seen this before. Adam Sosnick is now the biggest mega guy PBD knows. Imagine that. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. While they do deserve impeachment, not like the first administration, that's the difference. Exactly it. That's exactly it. That's it. You could have protected yourself from this. If you enacted your agenda, you could have won the midterms. Mass deportations. Finish out on Greenland. Do operations in Mexico. Don't be retarded with tariffs. Stop pushing Russia closer to China. Well, dude, there was the shooting in Texas, right? God be with the families of those who, lost lives, right? I would never kind of, say anything in that regard. But the guy was wearing a property of Allah sweaty or a sweatshirt and had like an Iranian t-shirt underneath. Listen, seems a little too on the nose here. Okay? A little too on the nose. I can't imagine any guy, I can't imagine that happening naturally or organically. All the time people will just like, if a rich person wants someone dead, all they need, Necron in the truck. Like what the, no. Like if a rich person wants someone dead, they will literally pay a homeless dude to go do it, and then they'll give him drugs overdose. Looks like this guy could have just been like the Quran could have been planted on it. He could have been told to go wear this and mentally ill enough to go ahead and shoot up a bunch of people at a restaurant. That's what it looks like it could be. It looks absolutely terrible in terms of like being organic. Especially since like it should have like that sort of a thing should have happened like on Thursday before the operation, after. Unless they're trying to spur support for the operation. If they thought that even that quickly they were seeing pushback on it. But I can't imagine it. I have no idea. No, Greenland would have been awesome. Greenland would have been fantastic. Greenland has tremendous access to that Arctic region, which is going to be where a lot of global trade happens, like trade routes happen in the future, right? Not to mention the critical minerals that they have that we need to harness in order to be competitive in the 21st century with China. China, who is also in the middle right now of building up Africa, Central Africa, because they have important minerals too. So China's building up infrastructure in Africa so that they can have access to those minerals, kind of leeching off the Africans there. And Ukraine is whining and dining, I think it was France, for minerals deal. Or I think it was Macron who was whining and dining Zelensky, because Zelensky has rare earth minerals that we need. Those same minerals are also in Greenland. And Greenland is much closer to us than Africa is or Ukraine is. Quite frankly, for Russia and Ukraine, the battle lines should be frozen where they are right now. Because really, there has been no real movement. There's been negligible movement since like the first year of the war, if anything, since like the first year of the war, Russia actually gained ground back against Ukraine. Freeze the lines of control. You promise to Russia that Ukraine will never be in NATO. Never be in NATO. And you arm Ukraine to the teeth like Trump did in his first campaign. What that does is it doesn't continue to push Ukraine into a meat grinder of a war. And it keeps Russia away from pacting with China. That's how you do it. Because if China and Russia pair up like that, that's a 21st century Axis powers that nobody wants to deal with. And Russia is a Orthodox Christian country. It really shouldn't be that difficult to rally them into better relations with Europe and keep them away from China. It really shouldn't be that difficult. The United States should just leave NATO. It creates too much of a power imbalance in terms of military negotiations, and forces Russia to be very provoked in terms of kind of preemptive attacks and moves. NATO should be a European military alliance, and hopefully that should incentivize them to beef themselves up so they can hold Russia back. We do not want Russia and China to be pushed together. That's a recipe for disaster. But kind of wrapping it all back in, bringing it back to the original topic of tonight. We went to war in Iran because we pushed them to an impossible situation, because we have toppled every single Arab country in the Middle East. Those who aren't already in a alliance, a pact with Israel already. Now that Iran has fallen, Israel has the keys to the castle. They will control all the oil, all of the Middle Eastern oil, which is half the oil in the world. They will control major global trade routes, and their use of military or of U.S. aid or help will go right out the window. We will no longer have them under our thumb. They will have no reason to listen to us or to take us seriously. Chat is kind of over. The opportunity we have over decades built up our own rival superpower. Like I said, countless American lives, trillions and trillions of dollars. We mortgaged our future to do this. And we will have nothing to show for it in the Middle East. We're going to leave the Middle East to Israel to go and pay attention, or to, give our attentions to Asia and to the Western Hemisphere. And I mean, what's keeping Israel from stabbing us in the back? They want to get off of U.S. aid as fast as possible. Because once they do, they can tell us to fuck right off. The second they get the chance, they will. But that is why I think that the war in Iran is a ginormous error. But it was almost an inevitable error because of the events leading up to it. You can't denuclearize every single Arab country and topple them like we have and expect Iran to just play ball. You can't do it. But we'll take a look at the comments here to see if we have any fresh ones, see what you guys are saying, and then I'll look to wrap everything up here. All right. If you guys have any questions for me on anything, feel free to just shoot them in the comments. If not, then I'll look to wrap this up. I do appreciate you guys tuning in tonight. If you liked the content, be sure to subscribe on YouTube at The Right Side. Follow me on X at right_side_USA. And of course, follow me on Rumble as well, The Right Side. I really want to do these streams very often in the off weeks. On Wednesday, I'll have a topic video that comes out. It's going to be a little bit more in depth on a certain kind of topic that's kind of been going on here. I want to keep the topic videos that are going to come out like every 2 weeks. Those are kind of the real like meat and potatoes of the channel. I want to keep those more evergreen, more kind of broad topics that I kind of take a personal interest in, and keep these streams to be more topical, dynamic type of content here, just so I can kind of keep up with what you guys are demanding and all that kind of stuff. So in that way, I used to be called The Right Report. You can watch a playlist on my channel where I had a handful of stories every single week, every single Friday that I would cover and upload those. Something like these streams can kind of take their place in that. So like I said, if you do enjoy the content, be sure to subscribe on YouTube, follow me on Rumble and X, like the stream if you have not already. And trust me, I do read every single comment that you guys do leave. And so I always look forward to reading and engaging with you guys in the comment section when I can. But if you want to show the support, hit the subscribe, hit the like button, share it with your friends. Word of mouth is very important. And building channel growth, all that kind of stuff really helps the channel, of course, grow and reach new audiences. And hopefully we can get a little bit of a snowball going. But with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed the stream. Thank you if you did, and I hope you guys all have a very